30 wolves protected her secret until the Alpha King arrived. The report came to me on the last day of the cold moon. My head steward, Bren, laid it on the council table with the careful air of a man delivering news he expected me to dislike. 36 wolves gone from the eastern packs over 2 winters, he said. Not dead, simply absent. No bodies in the snow, no scent trails leading to a rival territory, no signs of illness. The eastern pack masters had filed the losses quietly at first, 1 wolf here, 2 more the following season, assuming ordinary straying. But 30 wolves did not stray, and the pattern, all of them gone in the direction of Ashfin Wood, pointed to something that required my attention as Alpha King. Stolen, said my senior council elder Aldris, folding his hands on the table with the satisfied look of a man who has already decided the verdict. Someone is drawing them off, luring them with bait or with a rogue wolf caller. The eastern packs are weakened, my king. The border watch has already thinned. I looked at the report, 31 wolves. The number nagged at me in a way I could not name. Has anyone gone into the wood? I asked. Bren shifted. A pair of border scouts, my king, last autumn. They came back reporting nothing dangerous, only a small dwelling in the old Ashfin clearing, occupied by a single woman. No pack markings. She turned them away at the gate, said the land was licensed to a healer's settlement under the Old Moon Charter. They did not press further. Aldris made a dismissive sound. An old charter from 3 reigns past. Irrelevant. The wolves of this kingdom belong to the packs, and the packs answer to the throne. She has no right to them regardless of what she claims. I thought about that, and about the 31 wolves. I will go myself, I said. Aldris looked at me the way he always did when he thought I was doing something beneath my station. My king, a delegation. I said I will go myself. I took 4 riders and Aldris, who insisted on coming, as he always insisted, and we left Wolfmere at the first pale hour of morning, 3 days before the spring thaw turned the eastern road to mud. The ride into Ashfin Wood took most of the day. The forest there is old, older than the current pack boundaries, older than the hold itself. The silver birches grow so thick in places that the riders have to go single file, and the light comes down filtered and blue-white even in the afternoon. There was still snow under the trees, but the melt had started, and the air smelled of cold water and pine resin and something else I could not immediately place. I placed it an hour into the wood. Wolf, many wolves. Not a pack, exactly, the mingled scent of many individuals, the way a crossroad smells when every trader in the north has passed through it. 31 individual wolves living close together in a space that was not their born territory. My own wolf stirred inside me, not in challenge, but in something closer to attention. As though something in the distance had spoken his name. We found the clearing just before the sun dropped behind the ridge. It was larger than I had expected, an ancient moon clearing, the kind that forms at the meeting point of old ley lines, where the grass grows green even in winter, and the silver birches stand back from the edges as though giving it room. In the center stood a stone dwelling, not large, built with the careful hands of someone who had worked alone over a long time. A proper roof, a smoke hole, a gate of woven willow and birch pole that stood open, a kitchen garden sleeping under the last snow. And arranged in and around and on the roof and along the fence and under the bare apple trees at the clearing's edge, like a living wall, like a breathing border, 30 wolves. Every single one of them saw us the moment we came out of the trees. They rose, not aggressively. They did not lower their heads or show their teeth. They simply rose, 30 pairs of eyes turning toward us with a steady, unified attention that made my 4 riders pull their horses back without being asked. Aldris breathed in sharply, moon and stars. I held still and let my own wolf read them. What I felt was not a rogue energy. What I felt was guardianship. These wolves were standing a watch. They were posting themselves between something inside that clearing and whatever came out of the trees. Between her, I understood, and the rest of the world. The door of the stone dwelling opened. She came out onto the step with a clay bowl in her hands, half full of water and something crushed and green, and she stopped when she saw us. She was not young and not old, somewhere in the unreachable middle of those things, with the kind of still face that comes not from coldness but from a long habit of composure. Dark hair braided back, a worn gray dress under a patched winter cloak, boots that had been resoled more than once. She looked at me the way people who have lived alone for a long time look at strangers, not with fear, but with a clear, measured appraisal that withheld nothing and asked nothing. The 30 wolves did not move. Then the largest of them, a gray male I later learned was named Dusk because she had named every one of them, turned away from me and walked back to her side. He sat. He put his enormous head against her hip, and one by one, over the space of 30 seconds, the others settled too, not because I was safe, because she was. Something happened to me in those 30 seconds. It was not the slow warmth I had been told to expect from the stories of the mate bond, the ones the old moonseer women told to pups on winter nights, a gentle glow, a growing certainty. What I felt was more like the moment a door in a long, dark corridor opens, and the light is so abrupt and complete that you lose your sense of where the floor is. I gripped my saddle. My wolf, who had not reacted strongly to another person in 11 years, did not surge or rage or call. He simply went quiet in a way I had never felt him go quiet before, the way water goes still just before it reflects something perfectly. She was looking at me. "You are the Alpha King," she said, not a question. "I am," I said. She looked at the wolves around her feet, then she looked back at me. "Then I expect you've come for them." I dismounted. My riders stayed where they were. Aldris made a sound of protest that I silenced with a hand. I walked toward the gate alone, and the wolves watched me come, and none of them moved from her side. I stopped at the gate and looked at her across it. "Tell me their names," I said. She blinked. It was the only break in her composure, small as a hairline crack in stone. "I beg your pardon." "Their names, you've named them." A long pause. The gray wolf Dusk had not looked away from me. "How did you know that?" "Because they respond to you as individuals, not as a pack. That only happens when they have been called by name over a long time." I paused. 31 wolves. 30, she said. "One of them, the brindle female at the far end, is mine. She came with me when the rest of the pack was gone. The others came after." "Came how?" She looked away briefly at the snow at her feet, then back. "One at a time, mostly. Some of them were injured, some of them were lost. Some of them," she stopped, and when she resumed her voice was quieter. "Some of them came because the pack they belonged to had no room for them anymore. The old ones, the ones that slow down, or the young ones that bond at the wrong angle that the pack hierarchy doesn't have room for. They come to the edge of the wood, and they find me, and they stay." I looked at them again with different eyes. There was a very old wolf at the far edge of the group, nearly white with age, lying flat on his side in the sun with the complete abandonment of an animal that has decided to rest without fear. There was a young wolf near the apple trees with one foreleg that ended shorter than the other, heeled crooked from a break that had not been set well. There were 2 wolves near the door who were clearly bonded to each other, lying intertwined, from 2 different packs by their coloring. A pairing no pack's hierarchy would have permitted, a cross bond that would have been separated. She had taken in the ones no one else had kept. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 3 winters, she said. "My pack, the Ashfin settlement, the old healers' community, it dissolved, plagued 2 winters before I came here. There were 7 of us at the end, the others went to kinship packs. I had no kinship pack to go to, I had the land charter and Briar." She glanced at the brindle female. "So I stayed." Aldris had pushed his horse forward, impatient with a conversation he could not hear. "My king, The wolves belong to the eastern packs. The woman has no standing to shelter them, charter or no. We should simply. Aldris, I said without raising my voice. He stopped. I looked at her. What is your name? A hesitation that was barely perceptible. Senna. Senna. The name settled into me the way her eyes had, as though I had been waiting for it without knowing I was waiting. I would like to see the rest of them, if you are willing. The crack in her composure opened a little further. She had expected something else. An order, perhaps. A demand that she give them back and leave. Instead, I was asking, and she stood with the clay bowl in her hands for a moment longer than was comfortable, and then she stepped back and opened the gate. I spent the rest of the afternoon in that clearing. She walked me through it, the sleeping areas for the older wolves, sheltered under the eaves, the younger one's territory near the fence, the place by the far gate where the cross-bonded pair had dug themselves a hollow they returned to every night. She showed me the herb stores she kept, the poultices and the wound dressings, the winter feed she had gathered from the eastern ridge. She showed me the wolf with the crooked leg, whose name was Hazel, running through the snow on a path she had packed flat for him. She showed me the old white wolf, whom she called Frost, who had come 3 winters ago from the Caldenmere pack after his age slowing made him a burden on the winter hunt. He was not a burden here. He lay in the sun and let the young ones groom him and ate from the bowl she set down twice a day. She told me their names one by one, and she did not fumble a single one. My wolf was so still and so attentive inside me that I felt like a man listening to music he has heard only once before, in childhood, and cannot name but cannot stop hearing. You know every pack they came from, I said, when she paused at Frost's side. I keep records, she said simply. If the packs want them back, the wolves have the right to choose. I never kept any of them against their will. The ones that could go back I returned, but some of them, she smoothed her hand along Frost's white flank. Some of them are too old for the winter hunt, and the packs would not take them back as a burden, so they stay. I crouched beside Frost. He looked at me with the utterly calm eyes of a very old animal who has decided that the remaining portion of his life will be spent in peace, and raised his head a fraction, and let me touch him. The Eastern Pack Masters reported them as stolen, I said. Something moved across her face, not quite hurt, something older and more resigned than that. I know what they would report. A woman alone in the wood, their wolves gone. It reads like theft to a man who has not come to look. She looked at me steadily. But you came to look. I did, I said. Why? I thought about the true answer for a moment, the one I had not been able to give Aldris. Because 31 wolves gone in one direction over 2 winters felt like something other than a crime. Because something in the pattern had felt deliberate, and not in the way of a thief. Because, and this was the answer I could not explain even to myself until that moment, my wolf had been restless for a season and a half, in a way he had not been restless since I was young, and the restlessness had pointed in the same direction the wolves had gone. Because the number nagged at me, I said, which was true as far as it went. We went in when the sun fell below the ridge, and she made tea from dried herbs over a low fire, and she did not ask me to leave, and I did not offer to go. The wolves arranged themselves outside the door, 30 pairs of eyes at the windows, and inside it was warm and close and smelled of pine smoke and dried lavender, and the greenish-clean smell of the poultices she kept in ranked pots along the wall. She was not nervous, precisely. She was careful. There was a care in how she moved and how she spoke that told me she had been doing this alone long enough that the presence of another person required a deliberate adjustment of her habits. She handed me the cup with both hands and sat across the fire from me, and the brindle wolf, Briar, came in through the gap at the door and lay across her feet. The charter, I said, it is valid. She looked at me. Yes. My council elder would disagree. Your council elder has not read it. I almost smiled. No, he has not. I turned the cup in my hands. What do you intend with them, the wolves, long-term?" She was quiet for a long time. The fire popped. Briar's tail moved once. "To keep them safe," she said at last, as though this were such an obvious answer that she was slightly embarrassed to say it. "To give them their time. The young ones Hazel, the pair by the fence, the 3 autumn ones, they will bond properly in the spring, and when they are ready they can go back to a pack or form a small one here if the territory is recognized. The old ones stay. The injured ones stay as long as they need. I don't ask them to be useful. I only ask them to be here. You have been feeding and housing 30 wolves on a single healer's garden and a wood-gathering operation," I said. "And the forest it provides." "The forest," I said, "provides adequately to a pair, not to 31 wolves." She held my gaze. "It provides to the extent that none of them have gone hungry, my king." She had not gone hungry herself, though I suspected the margin had been a narrow one. The kitchen garden was real but modest. The food stores were organized with the efficiency of someone who had learned to make very little stretch. I looked at her hands around the clay cup, capable hands, the hands of someone who worked consistently and without complaint, and felt something in my chest that was not my wolf and not the bond and was simply its own uncomplicated thing, a profound respect. "You should have written to the throne," I said. "When the first wolves came, you should have sent for a pack master or at least registered them." "I should have," she agreed. "But I was afraid that if I registered them, they would be taken back to packs that did not want them and did not know how to keep them safe. Old wolves returned to hunt rotation, injured ones marked as costs. She paused. "I was afraid." "And so you kept them quietly and hoped no one would come?" "Yes." "For 3 winters?" "Yes." I looked at her directly, and then I came. Her chin lifted a fraction, and then you came. The fire between us was very warm, and the cup in my hands was cooling, and the 30 wolves were breathing outside the door, and my wolf was as still as he had ever been, perfectly, absolutely present in a way he had not been in over a decade. And I understood, in the clear-lit way that things make sense when you have stopped arguing with them, exactly what kind of attention I was paying and why. We sat in that small stone room until it was full dark. By the time I stood to leave, I had made 3 decisions. I did not tell her what they were. I said good night, and I thanked her for the tea, and I walked out to my riders with Aldous watching me with a familiar combination of exasperation and wariness that I had grown familiar with over his years of service. "Well," he said. "I will explain in the morning," I said. I rode back to the edge of the wood before we camped, because I did not want to sleep any closer to the clearing while I was still in the middle of understanding what had happened to me in it. But even at the edge of the wood, my wolf would not settle. He kept turning in a slow, unhurried circle inside me, the way he only turned when he had found the direction he wanted to go and was simply waiting for me to agree with him. I did not sleep. In the morning, I returned to the clearing alone. She was already up, already moving through the pack with the morning feed, a wooden bucket on one arm and Briar at her heels, and she stopped when she heard me come through the gate. The wolves knew me now, or perhaps they had known me from the beginning, the way wolves know the alpha before he speaks, and they parted around me easily, Dusk lifting his head in acknowledgement. "You came back," she said. "I did not leave," I said. "I camped at the wood's edge." She searched my face for a moment. "Why?" "Because I wanted to think, and I find I think better near here than far from it." I reached into my coat and took out the document I had drafted the night before by lantern light, on the back of Aldris's supply manifest, because I had nothing better to hand. "I want to show you something." She set the bucket down. Dusk immediately thrust his nose into it, and she corrected him absently with a small sound and a hand that redirected his head without even looking at him, and came to read what I held out. I watched her face as she read it. It was a rough draft, It would need the throne scribe to set it properly and the kingdom seal to ratify it, but its substance was clear. A formal recognition of the Ashfin Moon Grove as a protected sanctuary, under the Crown's direct charter, for the housing and care of wolves belonging to no active pack assignment. The aged, the injured, the cross-bonded, the ones the pack system had no category for. The keeper of the sanctuary to be appointed by and answerable to the throne, holding the land in perpetuity, with a stipend drawn from the Eastern Territories' pack dues. The wolves currently resident to be registered individually under the sanctuary's ledger and released from their former pack assignments without penalty. She read it twice. "This is not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" She looked up, to be told to give them back and go. "I considered it," I said honestly. "Aldra strongly recommended it." A breath of something like laughter crossed her face, and I came back at dawn, I said, which I believe makes my position clear. She looked at the document again. "The keeper, the appointed keeper," she looked at me. "That would be me. If you are willing." A pause so long that my wolf turned in his slow circle again, and I made myself wait, made myself be still, because she had the right to turn this over at whatever pace she needed, and I was not going to rush her. "The pack masters will object," she said at last. "The pack masters," I said, "do not have 30 wolves who have been alive and fed and healing for 3 winters under questionable circumstances. Their grounds for objection are somewhat complicated by the fact that the wolves they reported stolen are demonstrably in better condition than the pack averages for their age and injury class." She stared at me. "You looked at the pack records?" "I brought them with me. My writers carry the administrative manifests for the Eastern Territories. I read them last night." I paused. "Frost would have been euthanized last winter by the Caldenmere Pack's protocols for non-hunting capable wolves. He is currently sleeping on your south roof in the morning sun." Her throat moved. "He loves that roof." "I know," I said. "I watched him get up there. He is very determined." The laughter this time reached her eyes, and something in my chest cracked open a second time, different from the first. The first had been recognition, vast and vertiginous, but this was smaller and warmer, and in some ways more undoing than the first had been. "Yes," she said. "I am willing." I returned to Wolfmere that afternoon and spent the next 6 days with the throne scribes and the administrative council, and Aldra sulked magnificently, and filed 3 formal objections to the sanctuary designation, all of which I denied, and the Eastern Pack Masters sent a delegation that I met for exactly 1 morning before explaining, with patient precision, that 31 wolves found in better health than their own pack averages did not constitute evidence of theft, and that the documentation I intended to file would reflect that. They went home. I went back to Ashfin on the 7th day. I told myself it was to deliver the ratified charter in person. That was true, I did deliver it. But I had also, on the journey out, found myself thinking about whether she had enough split wood for the rest of the cold season, and about Hazel's crooked-heeled leg, and whether there was a bone setter in the Eastern settlements skilled enough to re-examine the old break, and about the way she had said Frost loves that roof with a tenderness so habitual she had not even noticed she was showing it. She met me at the gate. "You brought it yourself again," she said. "I am the Alpha King," I said. "I can assign these things to writers, or I can do them myself. I have found I prefer to do them myself." She took the charter from me. "Read the seal and the formal language with careful attention. It's real." "It is." She held it for a long moment, and then she did something that surprised me. She sat down on the gate's stone step, the document in her hands, and was quiet for a time that stretched long enough that I sat down beside her and was quiet too, and the wolves arranged themselves in the sun, and the morning air smelled of snowmelt and the first early green things pushing up at the clearing's edge. "I didn't think anyone would come," she said, finally, to the document or to the air or to me. I thought this would either be left alone or ended. I didn't think someone would come and make it something real. It was always real, I said. I only gave it the paper it deserved. She turned her head and looked at me. At this distance, the morning light was very clear, and her eyes were a darker color than I had first thought, and Briar had come to put her head across both of our feet in the comfortable assumption of the deeply bonded, and I was very aware that I was sitting exactly as close to her as I was, which was close. "Why do you keep coming back?" she said, not suspicious, honest. She was a woman who asked the real question when she wanted the real answer. I owed her the real answer. "Because my wolf found his direction," I said, "and I am not in the habit of arguing with him." Her gaze was still and clear and assessing, and she did not look away. "That sounds like something significant." "It is," I said. "I did not intend to say it so directly." "I prefer direct," she said. "I've been alone long enough to have lost patience with indirectness." "Then I will be direct," I said. "I came to a clearing in a winter wood expecting to find a woman with no right to be there and 30 wolves that needed reclaiming. I found 30 wolves in better health than the packs that lost them, and a woman who had spent 3 winters feeding the ones that no one else could find a use for. And something in me," I paused, looking for the right word. "Something in me stopped, and it has not started again in the same direction." She was very still. "My wolf has been restless for more than a year," I said. "He stopped being restless when I walked into this clearing. He has not been restless since. I do not know how else to say it plainly." "You are saying," she said carefully, as though working through something she had not expected to have to work through, "that you believe I am your fated mate." "I am saying," I said, "that my wolf believes it, and in 11 years of disagreeing with him on small matters, I have never disagreed with him on a large one, and this is the largest one I have encountered." She looked at the charter in her hands, then at the wolves, then at me. "I have lived alone for 3 years," she said. "I know. I am the keeper of a wolf sanctuary with no pack name and no standing, and your council elder spent our first meeting looking at me as though I were a stain on a formal document." "Aldris looks at almost everyone that way," I said. "He looked at me that way for the first year of my reign." "That is not reassuring." "It is accurate, which I believe you value more." She was quiet for a long time. A robin landed on the finstop and studied us with the bright, pragmatic eye of a bird who has decided we are not interesting enough to fly away from. Dusk had fallen asleep against the gate post. Frost was already on his roof. "If this is real," she said at last, "if what you are describing is real, then I need you to understand something." "Tell me." "They come with me." She looked at the wolves, all 30 of them, and her voice was steady. "Not as a condition I am putting on something else, simply as a fact. Where I go, they have the right to go. Frost is not a travel wolf. He stays here in this sun on this roof. But the others, if there is ever a question of me going somewhere and them not following, that question has an answer, and the answer is that I do not go." I looked at her for a long moment. "Senna," I said, "I have just filed a royal charter establishing their right to be exactly where they are. The question you are describing will not arise. But if it did, then the answer would be the same as yours." She searched my face. The real question she was asking was not about the wolves, and we both knew it. The real question she was asking was whether I was the kind of man who made real what he said he would make real, or the kind who made promises that turned hollow in the keeping. I held her gaze and did not look away and let her look as long as she needed, because she had every right to look. "All right," she said. 2 words, quiet and unadorned. But they were 2 words from a woman who was precise and did not speak past what she meant, and I felt them settle into the center of me the way something settling into the right place settles without drama, with only a sort of profound completion. All right, I agreed. I visited the clearing 7 times in the 6 weeks that followed. On the 4th visit, I brought the bone setter from the eastern settlement, a young woman named Tanit who had a gentle hand with old injuries, to look at Hazel's crooked leg. The re-examination could not fix the old break, but Tanit showed Senna a rewrapping method that would reduce the compensatory strain on the hip, and she stayed the afternoon and left with a strong affection for Hazel and a commission to return monthly. On the 5th visit, I brought split wood from the Wolfmere stores, loaded on 2 pack horses, because I had noticed the wood pile and could not stop noticing it. Senna saw it coming and stopped in the clearing gate and looked at me and said, "You brought firewood." I brought firewood. On a royal pack horse. The horses do not seem to mind. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she laughed, not the breath of laughter from the first day, but a real one, full and sudden and uncalculated, and the sound of it moved through me like the first real warm day after a long winter. On the 6th visit, I stayed overnight, and we talked until the fire burned low about things I had not talked about in years, about the weight of running a kingdom by the old codes, about what the pack system protected and what it failed to protect, about the old moon charter she had found in her predecessor's papers that had given her the legal foothold she needed. She had read more of the old governance texts than most of my council. She had thoughts about them that were clear and uncomplacent and sometimes surprising. My wolf, for the duration of that conversation, felt like the tide coming in, not urgent, not cresting, simply present and rising and inevitable. On the 7th visit, I came with the court archivist and the official registry clerk, and we spent the afternoon recording 30 wolves into the kingdom's ledger, not as strays, not as pack assignment debtors, but as named individuals under the Ashfin Moongrove Sanctuary designation. The archivist, a meticulous elderly man named Oren who had been archiving the kingdom's records for 40 years, wrote each name in his finest script. Senna read them aloud to him one by one. Dusk Briar, Frost, Hazel, Ember and Ash, the cross-bonded pair, Lark, the young female who had been too gentle for her birth pack's hierarchy, River, who had come in the first autumn with a thorn abscess in his paw that had taken 3 weeks to clear, 3 more young ones, Cedar, Flint, Stone, who had arrived together from a dissolved pack and slept in a pile of 3, 20 more, all named, all recorded, their former pack affiliations and arrival dates and current conditions noted beside each name. Oren wrote them all without complaint, and with a careful respect that I suspected had nothing to do with my being there, and everything to do with the precision and care she brought to the naming. When it was done and the ink was dry and the ledger pages folded into the official pouch, Oren looked up and said, "This is the first individual registry of non-pack wolves in the kingdom's history, my king." "I know," I said. He nodded once, the way Oren nodded when he approved of a thing compact and genuine. "Good." The archivist and the clerk went back with my writers, and I stayed. The sun was finishing at the ridge's edge, and the clearing was full of the long gold of late afternoon, and the wolves had spread themselves across it the way they always did in the evening, some near the fence, some near the door, Frost on his roof with the satisfaction of a creature who has found his preferred place and refuses all invitations to leave it. Senna stood at the center of the clearing with the charter and the ledger copy in her hands, and looked at them both for a long time. I came to stand beside her. "Say something direct," she said, "to the documents or to the clearing or to me." "I intend to keep coming back," I said. "I know that." She turned her head toward me. "Say something that isn't about the sanctuary." I looked at her in the late gold light, and at Briar at her feet, and at the 30 wolves in the clearing behind her, and at the stone house with its smoke hole and its window and its carefully resoled boot tracks in the snow outside the door. "I have not looked forward to a day," I said, "the way I look forward to the days I come here in 11 years. My wolf does not circle. He does not strain. He points here and waits, with more patience than he has ever shown me about anything, which I suspect is his way of letting me take my own time about it. I paused. I do not want to take much more time. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned fully to face me, and her expression was the one she wore when she was deciding something, clear and unguarded and without performance. "Neither do I," she said. The mate mark came quietly, the way things come when they are not being forced. I felt it before I saw it, a warmth along my wrist that was not the warmth of the fire, a resonance, a recognition that moved through the bond channel like a current finding the sea. I turned my wrist and the mark was there, the pale gold lines of it that every Alpha King carried in potential, now awake and present and specific to her. Senna looked at her own wrist where the answering mark had appeared, the same lines in the same configuration, precise as a signature. She looked at me. "Well," she said. "Well," I agreed. Dusk had come to sit beside us without either of us noticing. He looked at the marks and then at us, and then back at the marks with the air of a wolf who has been expecting this for some time and is simply pleased it has arrived. I offered her my hand, and she took it, and the bond closed between us like a door swinging home, complete and warm and inarguable. We stood in the clearing until the light was gone, hand in hand, the wolves arranged around us in their evening configurations, Frost a white shape on the dark roof above us against the early stars, Briar's tail moving slowly against the ground at our feet. She told me their names again, all 30 in the dark, in no particular order, as though she simply wanted to say them in the hearing of the bond, and I listened to every one. Later, I asked her what she had thought when I had first walked out of the trees, what she had seen when she looked at me across the gate, with the wolves risen on all sides of her. She considered this for a while. "I saw a man who dismounted and asked their names," she said. "I had expected an order. I had prepared myself for an order. And then you asked their names, and I didn't know what to do with that." "And now," I said. She looked at me in the firelight, her hand still in mine, Briar a warm weight across our feet. "Now," she said, "I know what to do with it." In the weeks that followed, there were the things that had to be done. A formal presentation to the council, which Aldris managed with the long-practiced air of a man swallowing his objections in a dignified manner. The Eastern Packmasters received the notice of the bond with a range of reactions, from genuine warmth from the older Packmaster of Moorcroft, who sent a cart of winter feed for the sanctuary the following week, to a stiff formality from the Caldenmere Packmaster, who had signed the euthanization order for Frost 3 winters ago and seemed aware of it. I invited him to come and see Frost on his roof. He came, and he stood in the clearing, and he watched the old white wolf descend with infuriating confidence for a cart of dried elk, and to his credit he laughed. The pack system did not change overnight. It does not change overnight. I did not expect it to. But the sanctuary ledger became a precedent, and the precedent became policy, and by the following autumn 2 other settlements had applied for Moon Grove designations under the new sanctuary charter, and Senna had been asked to advise on the standards. She advised with the same directness and precision she brought to everything, and Oren the archivist developed a profound admiration for her governance thinking that he expressed by sending her copies of his historical analysis documents, and then showing up in person when she had questions, which, being Senna, she always did. We were married in the Ashfin clearing, not in the Wolfmere Great Hall, because she asked and I had no objection, and the wolves could not easily attend a Great Hall ceremony, and the wolves were attending. 30 of them arranged themselves in the clearing with the solemnity of creatures who understood the gravity of the occasion, and Frost came down from his roof, a concession of spectacular proportions, and lay in the center of everything as though he were the chief elder presiding. Aldris attended with a formal coat and an expression of effortful cordiality. He brought a gift, a first edition of the Old Moon Charter in a case. It was a good gift. Senna thanked him with a directness that clearly both unsettled and pleased him. And the brindle wolf, Briar, sat at Senna's feet throughout, as she always sat, as she had sat for 3 winters in the wood when there was no one else to sit beside, and she would sit there for many more years after. Through the seasons the sanctuary grew, and the wolves came and went, and the old ones grew older, and new young ones arrived at the clearing edge with their tentative eyes and their untold stories. I learned their names as she told them to me, all of them, one by one as they came. It was the least I could do. It was, in truth, the thing I loved best, sitting at the fire in the evening with the door open and the sounds of the grove around us, and her voice going through the names the way she always went through them when a new one arrived, careful and specific, and without a single one forgotten. 30 wolves had kept her secret for 3 winters. When I arrived, I did not take it from her. I simply put my name beside it and stayed.